Erdin Beshimov es un gran emprendedor y educador. Fundó MIT Bootcamps y también Class Hour, dos empresas de educación a través de las cuales ha entrenado e inspirado miles de personas alrededor del mundo. Además, es profesor de innovación en MIT, una de las mejores universidades del mundo. En su clase, él enseña en la metodología estrella de MIT, Lead User Innovation, innovación del usuario líder. En esta entrevista, no solo nos va a contar de qué trata este método, así lo podemos implementar en nuestras empresas, sino que además nos va a dar ejemplos muy concretos de cómo empresas como Nike, Sony y otras pudieron implementar esta metodología para crear los productos que conocemos todos. Erdin es de un país que se llama Kirguistán y probablemente muchos de ustedes jamás hayan escuchado ese nombre. Kirguistán pertenecía a la Unión Soviética, eran comunistas y pasaron a ser independientes y capitalistas. Erdin nos va a contar su experiencia y en un mundo en que todo cambia tan rápido, esta experiencia vale oro. Así que, a disfrutar la entrevista.
Okay, so hello, Erdin. I'm so happy to see you and have you here at my new podcast.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to see you. I'm very happy to have a conversation. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. So we are going to be talking about lead user innovation. Today, we're going to be learning how very famous companies came up with their innovations or how they can do it. So we can take some key learnings out of this very innovative process coming from MIT. But before we get there, can you please tell me something about you? How did you get here?
Of course, I'm happy to say a few words. I'm an educational entrepreneur, and really, I've been playing this role professionally, and really, it's more than professionally. For me, it's really has been my life's journey for most of my adult life. And today I'm the founder of an educational company, Class Hour. I've also founded MIT Bootcamps that you're very well familiar with, and we've had a wonderful opportunity to work together as part of that. And I believe in the mission of educational entrepreneurship because education is really the most important thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And because the world is constantly changing, and sometimes it's rapidly changing, you've got to continuously adapt education to the needs of today. And that's where the entrepreneurship piece comes into it.
This is amazing. And taking a little step backwards, just a little more context. You are from Kyrgyzstan, right?
Yeah, I am.
Can you tell us a bit more? Because most people have never heard that name before.
Yeah, and especially for your listeners, most of whom will be in South America, but I'm sure there will be many beyond South America. When you think about a region or a country that could be as far away as the moon, for people in South America, it's Kyrgyzstan. It's like
Great.
it is so far that it's almost impossible to tangibly feel that it exists. But I assure your listeners that this country does exist, and I'm one of its products. It's a wonderful country, and it's a country that used to be part of the Soviet Union. So we've gone through this fascinating historical period of the Soviet Union collapsing, our economy, our political system changing, us coming back to the global stage in the sense that prior to the when we were in the Soviet Union, we couldn't travel abroad. We were quite locked in our environment, and then we had the opportunity to be to re-enter the world, and that was really interesting. And so I must say that my dedication to education really comes from being a citizen of Kyrgyzstan or someone who came from Kyrgyzstan, because for a lot of people, education was this essential process of going through this tumultuous, very difficult transformation. And really, most of the world is the same. It's the same. We're going through constant transformations, and that's why education matters.
And I was not planning to go here, but as you bring it up, can you tell me a little more about that transformation from being a communist country into starting opening up and suddenly being a capitalist country? I don't know if you got there.
It was crazy. And I will tell you actually the exact date. It was December 25th, Christmas, but in the Soviet Union, religious holidays were not celebrated. We were in school. It was almost the end of the school year, December 25th, 1991. And our teacher comes in the morning. We're in school. I was, I was in 5th grade. And she tells us, kids, I want to inform you that you are no longer citizens of the Soviet Union. This country no longer exists. And she says, well, I have nothing more to share. I don't know what's happening. I must say, I'm very grateful. I lived through that. I'm very, very grateful. And I'm grateful, first of all, because, me and my family were able to survive that very difficult period. A lot of people haven't. And it wasn't that it was violent. Thankfully, in Kyrgyzstan, it was not. In many other parts of the Soviet Union, it was violent. But it was just very difficult psychologically, economically. A lot of people didn't survive. That's just the reality of it. Many really succumbed to depression. We didn't, at the time, have a word for it. No one knew what it meant. It didn't exist. It wasn't in the consciousness of people, but it existed. And people lived it. And so I'm very grateful that we were able to survive that period. But at the same time, to have a sense that the world can change. The world really can change. And actually, this really connects with my professional mission of entrepreneurship and education, because when the world is changing, you need learning, you need knowledge. And at the same time, this entrepreneurial mindset helps people deal with uncertainty. And we do live in a world of uncertainty today. So I believe that this gives tremendous currency to the work that I do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was amazing. So back to our innovation topic. So can you tell us what's this lead user innovation concept?
I'm glad you asked, because it's a remarkably powerful and informative concept. The basic idea is this, that innovation is driven by people who are solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. They are solving their own problems, be it at work, be it at life. And this is where innovation springs from. And people innovate when they do not have existing solutions to their problems. Now, what makes them lead users? What makes them lead users is sometimes people have problems that run somewhat in advance of the general societal trend, or you could say market demand. And what this means is when they solve a problem for themselves, ultimately, that solution that they have for themselves becomes valuable to others. And so, in essence, they lead innovation. To me personally, it demystified innovation. A lot of people, including me before I came to MIT, have the view of innovation as this mysterious, magical process that is done by very special and very smart people, often behind closed doors in labs.
Steve Jobs, not me, Steve Jobs.
Or scientific labs. And some of that is true. Yes, that does happen. But at the same time, that way of framing innovation has the effect of pushing away other people who feel intimidated by that. They feel like, well, this is not me. I'm not special. I'm not scientifically driven. Therefore, I cannot do innovation. But the reality is, innovation happens everywhere, all the time, and most people do it, and often without knowing it. It's the most natural human trait imaginable. One example that everyone listening to this would be familiar with, the company is Nike. Nike is a direct byproduct of lead user innovation. It was brought to life by two individuals, Phil Knight, he is the more well-known co-founder of Nike, the co-founder and CEO, and Bill Bowerman. Now, Bill Bowerman was a running coach at the University of Oregon. And that was now 50 years ago, more around that time. And Phil Knight was his student. At the time that Bill Bowerman was coaching running and Phil Knight was studying it, running was not a thing. Now you go outside and everyone is running. Jogging became really an activity that everyone does. It wasn't like that. 50 years ago, you didn't even have running shoes to go running.
Sneakers. Where you're running from, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was not a thing. And so Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight engaged in very systematic experimental work, trying to create the best shoe for running. And there is a name for one of the original shoes, and it's a waffle shoe. And that's because Bill Bowerman used a waffle maker. He took a piece of rubber, put it into a waffle maker to melt it, then cut out the shape and attached it to a shoe. And that's how we have sneakers today that have rubber soles that are soft, that allow us to run. Right?
Wow, look at that.
How it came about. And now we have this remarkable company, globally known, and it came out from very simple origins of people trying to solve a very simple problem. How do I create more traction when I run? That's it.
What do you think are the key skills that you have to have in order to make this innovation?
The beautiful thing about this is none of it is special or unattainable. What I'd like you to note is that they used existing tools. They didn't make a scientific breakthrough inventing rubber. Rubber existed. They took rubber from a tire shop. They had a waffle maker, right? None of it was new. None of it was breakthrough. And so the qualities were essentially character qualities. It's this tinkering mindset. They were tinkering, trying to see what could work. Everyone can do that. Obviously, the work was experimental. It didn't work right away. You have to persist. Try again. But again, everyone can learn that. And the magic of lead user innovation is that it makes people realize that it is attainable. It is within their hands.
How can organizations or companies or entrepreneurs work with these lead users in order to identify innovations that are worth pursuing?
Established enterprises look for average needs of average consumers. They look to find that bulk of the distribution, the average consumer, find their average needs, which you can serve in a scalable fashion, in a profitable fashion. That's a modern enterprise. But this is not the path to innovation. The path to innovation is to find irregular needs of irregular consumers. People who are different from others. People who are unusual. People who are rare. People who are weird. Because generally, there will be no good products to serve their needs because they're so rare, so different. But it is possible that the intensity with which they experience a problem drives them to develop solutions that could be useful for others. And it's an example of a market research consultancy that was working with a large enterprise to develop new brushes for toilets, brushes that clean toilets. What can we do to innovate? It's a commodity space. Every brush is the same as the next one. How do you compete in a market like that? There is perfect competition that competes away all of your profits. What can you do? You need to innovate. And sort of, instead of going out to average consumers, they've gone out to consumers, which were a far smaller group, who have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, who care a great deal more about cleanliness than the average person. And they observed how those individuals clean their toilets. And it turns out they don't do it in the same way that others do. They don't just use the brush. One of the examples was some people with OCD, they have a brush, but in addition to that, they rub that brush with toilet paper.
Okay.
Clean it, then get rid of the toilet paper because that's more clean. And so that's where the idea of using a disposable brush, a brush that would have a disposable little blanket with a disinfectant that you use to clean it, and then boom, you click a button and the disposable blanket goes away. Don't go out looking for average needs, find unusual needs. And this will be your pathway to innovation.
Fascinating. If you have another example, I would love to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. The other example, it's an example of my favorite product, which is the Sony Walkman. Young people today don't know about Sony Walkman,
it is.
but my God, I have never been, honestly, in my life, I have never been emotionally impacted more by a consumer product than by the Sony Walkman.
Interesting.
Because it was the first time in our life that we experienced personalized music. The Sony Walkman was that bridge to it being something personal. And I remember listening. I wonder if you would know it. I bet you would, and many of your listeners would as well. Roxette.
Sure. My second
And
CD.
oh my God, it must have been loved by Roxette on
Absolutely.
the Sony. And how did the Sony Walkman come about? Well, the Sony Walkman was proposed as an idea by one of the executives at Sony, who at that time traveled frequently to the United States selling other electronics, radio sets that Sony was making. The main market was the United States, and so he would frequently take flights. Now, that executive was really into opera, loved listening to the opera, and in fact, he would take an entire like Sony in Russian. I don't even know what the word is in English, because by the time I got to the United States, there were iPods, but we called it magnetophone. It's like the stereo player.
In Spanish would be magnetophone. Yeah.
But here's the thing. So he flew first class, and he would book an additional seat next to him so that he could carry a case with tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And Sony invested in that, all great. And so he would listen to it, and he would plug his big headphones into the big magnetophone. But you see, his need was unusual. He needed to listen to the music while traveling, and he was unusual in the sense that not only he loved music while traveling. At the time, not many executives were traveling like that, especially first class, and had the ability to have two extra suitcases, one for the magnetophone and one for the tapes. And so he said that his idea was, well, can we make the device smaller? And then he thought, we probably can, because we already sell those tape recorders that they sold to journalists. When journalists would take interviews, remember those little devices?
Yeah.
What do you even call them? The voice recorder.
Yeah. Yes.
And he thought, well, is there a way to make it not record voice, but instead play voice? Instead of recording, have it just play. And he said, well, of course it's possible, because those voice recorders could also play the sound. Got some support for that idea within Sony. But at first, that initial Sony Walkman product was not a success, was a failure. And the reason for that is, how did Sony sell its stereo recorders, magnetophones, voice recorders? It sold them through electronic stores. But when they took the Walkmans to the electronic stores, the store owner said, well, we can't sell it because since it doesn't record voice, the journalists would not buy it. And they couldn't grasp the idea that somebody would listen to the music with headphones. And so Sony spent a year rebuilding the marketing campaign. And so that's when they kind of really went in the direction of making it cool to listen to music on your own, creating really I would say, the first truly global consumer revolution.
That's fascinating. And also because when something new comes, like not everybody gets it, right? Also, when the iPod came up, people were like, who will want 1,000 songs? So it was also hard to grasp. And let's not even discuss about the iPhone, right? So at the beginning also, I guess there's a trade-off, and that can be a question for you. Like, how do you know the difference between this is so amazing, it will be the next big thing, versus this doesn't work, nobody wants it, this is just in my mind, right? Because the line can be a bit blurred.
Let's first go back to the Nike example. Your first sign that this is valuable, that you're not crazy, right? Because that's a natural question to ask. Am I crazy? They actually were not crazy. Why? They were solving the problem for themselves. They knew that the problem existed, because at the time, most shoes, including running shoes, they were made of leather, and the sole was made of leather. But on clay surfaces, leather is bound to slide. So that's number one. They were solving their own problem. Number two, they had a user community. They shared those designs with other runners. Bill Bowerman would give his shoes to his runners on his team, and they did really well. So all of a sudden, okay, maybe not the whole world wants this, but at least my 15 runners on my team, they need it, they like it, they're doing better with it. Right? That tells you, and that's how you begin.
That's amazing. And how do you think AI is reshaping the world of creativity and innovation?
That is really one of the most important questions today, because AI is here. It is playing an influential role, and it'll continue doing so, because my belief is that generative AI actually will not be superior to lead users. Why? Well, if you look at the technical foundation of generative AI, it's a statistical technology. It looks for commonalities.
Yeah, it learns from the past.
Exactly. Not just from the past, but it looks for the more likely statistical pathways. It looks at what is most likely statistically.
Yeah.
Well, that's the opposite of the uncommon, the rare, the weird, the unusual, which is the lead user innovation.
Exactly.
It is nearly impossible for lead user innovation to register for generative AI. It would be dismissed as a statistical anomaly. Now, there is a way to get there. You have to work with AI and prompt it to look at the more unusual cases. And if you're persistent and patient with that, you will get to some outcomes. But it's not guaranteed. It's not foolproof. So I think AI will be very helpful as a secondary tool. The mind and the experience of the lead user is still the primary tool. It's still the primary foundation. But AI can be really useful in terms of asking questions. If you are Bill Bowerman at Nike, let's say he was here today using generative AI. Once he figured out that initial idea that he needs to pursue, he could say, well, is there anything else that I could use instead of rubber? Where else could I get rubber? So breakthrough innovation, that's still the mind of the innovator. And then incremental innovation, optimization, you can certainly use AI for that.
It's very interesting. This is really like not relying on AI, but working together with AI, right? As a co-pilot, as a colleague, not as the source of truth.
Yeah, and I actually think, based on what you're saying, I'll say this, that I think it was a major mistake for AI companies such as OpenAI to promote generative AI as a replacement of humans. The narrative that AI would disrupt so many jobs and so many people would lose jobs. I understand why they were doing it. They were doing it to raise money. And if you create shock and awe, your ability to raise money increases. But ultimately, I think in the long term, it will be very counterproductive to the generative AI transformation, because it's an assistive technology. It's not a replacive technology.
I love this view. I totally agree. We need to collaborate and really use it as a tool, not as a replacement, or again as a source of truth that we then, like, some people tend to see it as that, right? Like, oh, AI says it. Do you think creativity is like a superior ability or the product of discipline?
I think it is a superior ability, and I think what I mean by that, do you think it is sort of innate, or do some people naturally have a more creative capability or outlook? There are certainly some natural things, personality traits that people have that can allow them to be more creative. And one of them is just the willingness to be wrong, and the willingness to be playful with ideas, not to attach oneself to a particular idea, not to commit, but just to be playful, to sort of exist in this wonderful, playful exploration. I think some of that certainly is genetic or is nurtured in the home during childhood. But at the same time, it can be learned as well. It can be taught as well. But to your point about discipline, there are certainly methods to creativity, and we can talk about it later. There are deeply analytical methods, such as the morphological analysis. It's deeply analytical, and for it to work well, it requires discipline. So really, it's both.
Okay, so to close, if you had to give one advice to current entrepreneurs that are trying to, make their business work, what would you recommend in terms of innovation?
I, as you know, generally don't like giving advice because I feel like there's too much advice in the world. But let me say this: less than advice and more is encouragement. How about that? More is encouragement. Don't give up. Don't give up. This is not easy. This is not supposed to be easy. And the beautiful thing is, you know what's really amazing about being an entrepreneur today? Even though it's really hard, because my goodness, it's not easy. But the world is really changing. It's changing in dramatic, unexpected, unpredictable, truly fundamental ways. And change is a friend to the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs who take this amorphous, voluminous transformation that we call change and turn it into like very crystal, very specific proposals to people about what a new life could be. And it's honestly, it's a very special role to play that, frankly, you don't have to ask anyone's permission. You just do it.
Thank you so much, Erdin. It was really a pleasure, as always, to hear from your international, worldwide, optimistic view of the world and how we can create something new and better.
Oh, I'm glad that you felt that it was optimistic. I'm actually really happy to hear that was the feeling that you got, because it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk again soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Amiga. I'm very happy for you, and keep it coming.